This chess game would make you question all the chess rules you've ever learned, because how would someone sacrifice all their pawns and still manage to win the game? The game took place in the 19th century, contested between Dr. William Ballard and the London player Joseph Fegan. Ballard had the white pieces, and for this exhibition, it began at a material disadvantage. He removed a knight from his starting position, offering his opponents a full piece handicap as a way to balance the difference in strength. From this unusual starting position, let's follow the moves from White's perspective and see how this extraordinary game unfolded. White opens the game with pawn to e4, and Black responds symmetrically with e5. From here, Ballard chooses the king's gambit, immediately offering a pawn in return for the rapid development and attacking chances. White begins the sequence with f4, offering the first pawn, and Black accepts the gambit, and in return, White develops the knight to gain activity. While Black continues to spend time capturing materials, White focuses on bringing pieces into play. Black develops the bishop to e7, placing it on a solid square, while White replies immediately with bishop to c4, choosing an active diagonal that targets the sensitive f7 pawn near the Black king. It is important to note that Black is up a piece, and the strategy he's deploying is straightforward. Simplify the position by exchanging materials, aiming to gradually convert the material advantage into a winning endgame. Black checks with bishop to h4, intending to force the White king to move and thereby removing castling right. Instead, Ballard calmly offers another pawn with g3, both blocking the bishop's path and also attacking it in the same process. Black accepts the challenge and captures on g3. In response, White castles kingside, deliberately placing another pawn on h2 within reach. At this point, Black hesitates to take the pawn on h2, recognizing the potential danger. Their development lags, and castling safely is still a concern. Capturing on g3 would open the f-file for White's rooks, activate the bishop, and allow the knight and the queen to quickly join the attack. To avoid these complications, Black instead chooses the quieter move, knight to h6, bringing a piece into play. So with the knight now on h6, the vulnerable f7 square is also defended, preventing an immediate breakthrough. White strengthens the position with d4, gaining central control and opening lines for the dark squared bishop. Black now castles kingside, both securing the king and reinforcing the f7 point. Since earlier in the game, Black declines to capture on h2, White takes matter into their hands by capturing on g3 and in the process offering yet another pawn. Black accepts, gladly removing it and further weakening the White's kingside structure. The White king now steps forward to g2, directly challenging the bishop on g3. With limited retreat squares available, the bishop falls back to d6. Up to this point, White has already sacrificed 3 pawns on the king's side, exposing their own monarch in the process, but at the same time, creating open lines aimed squarely at Black's king. White now brings the rook to h1, immediately targeting the knight on h6 because the bishop also eyes it. Should that knight be eliminated, the rook will break through on the open file, giving White a powerful attacking initiative. Black replies with queen to f6, reinforcing the knight on h6. Now, if White were to capture, Black would recapture with the pawn, securely protected by the queen. Looking more closely, the queen and the bishop stand only a square apart, making them vulnerable to a fork, and White seizes the moment with e5, attacking both pieces at once. But Black is prepared, sliding the queen to g6 with a check. After the first king move to f1, Black continues with knight f5, bringing another piece into the attack. Black now leaves the bishop hanging as bait, but if White were to capture, knight to g6 will follow, forking the rook on h1 and the king on f1. So instead, White shifts the rooks to g1, attacking the queen. With the bishop still left hanging, Black pushes forward with knight to g6. At first glance, it looks as though White could simply capture the knight and then the bishop, but it's important to remember that White began the game already down a knight. In this line, Black would emerge with a rook against a minor piece, while White's king would remain dangerously exposed. So after knight to g3 check, White steps to king f2. Black maintains the pressure with knight to e4, centralizing the knight and tightening the control. With the attack mounting, the White king is forced to retreat. The rook on g1 is securely defended. The queen cannot capture because the knight on f3 covers the square, and at this point, both black's queen on g6 and bishop on d6 are under threat. Black's next move, however, reveals this is no casual player. Bishop to b4 check, sidestepping the danger while delivering check. White has no time to capture the queen on g6, and moving the king will only invite greater danger. Instead, white plays c3, calmly offering 2 more pawns in an effort to blunt black's momentum. Black accepts the offer with knight takes on c3, at once attacking the queen on d1 and creating a threat of discovered checks from the bishop. White has no choice but to capture, and after the recapture, bishop takes on c3 check follows. The rook on a1 now moves under fire, and in this sequence, white concedes 2 more pawns. The king steps back to f2, leaving the black queen on g6 still under attack. With no time to capture the rook, black instead strikes back with queen to c6, launching a counter-attack on the bishop. With both the rook on a1 and the bishop on c4 under attack, one of the pieces must fall. White opts to preserve the bishop, retreating it to d3, a key decision as both bishops now bear down on the king's side. The knight and the queen are poised to join the attack as well, but the cost is clear. The rook on a1 will be surrendered. Black accepts and the bishop captures on a1. On paper, black now stands a full rook and 4 pawns ahead, a seemingly decisive advantage. Yet, most of their pieces remain undeveloped, and the king's position is far from secure. At this moment, white adds yet another sacrifice, pushing the undefended pawn to d5, offering a fresh bait. If black were to capture with the queen, white's reply would be bishop takes on h7 check, followed by winning the queen on d5, a sequence that would turn the game completely. Aware of this trap, black instead chooses queen to b6 check. White activates the bishop in response with bishop to e3, targeting both the queen and the bishop on a1. Black responds with queen to b2 check, simultaneously checking the king and defending the bishop. After king f1, however, black faces a dilemma. The bishop on a1 is now trapped, shielded by the queen. Black strikes back with f5, cutting off the diagonal from white's dangerous bishop, which has been eyeing h7. At this point, Ballard begins to lose a little precision. He plays bishop to d4, targeting both the queen on b2 and also the bishop on a1. Black chooses to capture the pawn on a2. This is not a poor option in itself, but after white removes the bishop on a1, black immediately regains balance by recapturing with the queen on d5. The mission isn't complete. Ballard now advances his final pawn with e6, the strongest continuation. This is white's last pawn on the board, but it cannot be captured immediately because doing so would open the long diagonal for the dark squared bishop. And if you check well, the rook is also in line of the g7 pawn, so it would be dangerous to capture the pawn that was pushed. So to defend this, black is forced to play g6. With this move, black seems to have stabilized the position, yet the white pawn continues to move forward with e7, attacking the rook and threatening promotion. Black blocks with the rook, but white calmly plays queen to e2. Now, the pawn is untouchable, and the queen gains access to the second rank. Black responds with queen to c5, adding more pressure on the pawn, but in doing so, they overlook a major threat. White's intention in this position is definitely not to defend the pawn, but to swing the queen across to b2. The weakened dark squares surrounding the black's king leave no adequate defense. White proceeds with the plan, and black is forced to capture the pawn on e7. Otherwise, mate would follow immediately with queen to g7 checkmate. With this, white has now sacrificed every single pawn. None remain on the board, and there is no longer any defense. Queen to h8 check, forcing the king to f7, and then the elegant conclusion. Knight to g5 checkmate. The queen and the bishop combine to dominate the dark squares, with the queen controlling the entire h rank, and finally, the doctor's knight deliver the decisive blow on f7 and also covering e6 to steal mate. If you enjoyed this video, I'm 100% sure you are going to enjoy this also on your screen, because this is my most viewed video on this channel. Before you go, please hit that subscribe button and I'll be glad. Thank you very much. Bye.